if someone is having those thoughts, they need to acknowledge that it is an emergency. To have the thought is an emergency, not when they're thinking about actually doing it. It's when they're seriously contemplating that is a good idea. When they think that ending their life is a good idea, that's when it's an emergency.
Welcome to Power Perspectives, People, Passion, Purpose. I'm your host, Shannon. And this episode, we are going deep. I can already feel it be pretty intense in preparation. Just before introducing my truly unique guest, please be advised, we're going to be talking about men's health with Amanita Muscaria in a specific focus to suicide prevention. So just as a trigger warning, it's a pretty heavy issue for many people, especially men that are battling with this. So speaking of battle, I have with me probably the most interesting person that will be in most rooms. He's the world leading expert on Amanita Muscaria from Amanita Warriors. He goes by Laughing Dragon and has had some incredible experiences. He sat in ceremony with Mother Ayahuasca over 1,000 times and definitely spoke to a lot of other plant teachers. And with his wisdom, he is just changing lives. It is a great privilege to be sitting with you, Dragon. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thanks so much. I did want to correct one thing. Sure. I've only been with ayahuasca over about 300 times, but I've done over 1,000 ceremonies total, concluding everything I've ever tried.
Cool. So, well, that's still about hundreds more than other people.
Yeah. It's a lifestyle. It's the way in which I go about my spiritual practices. And this all originated really, I was about 31. I had tried through my own means to build a life for myself that I would enjoy. I went to like extreme lengths to do this. When I was 25, I lived in the US and I had a regular job and I was doing well. I had a girlfriend and all that, but I was really unhappy and there was no meaning or purpose in my life. It seemed like life was just like this like perpetual routine that you're just supposed to like be like a machine and you just do the same things and you get these tiny little rewards, but there's no point to it. And this became so overwhelmingly difficult to deal with when I was 25, on top of other issues that I had from my childhood, that I just left the US completely. And I moved to South America and I lived in several countries. I ended up living in Brazil for 7 years. And while I was in Brazil, I built a company there. And I tried to make my life work, as I was saying, but I just couldn't do it. And it was because I was too I had PTSD. I was way too traumatized to make it work. I also had chronic insomnia. I had 2 chronic illnesses. I had chronic fatigue and a chronic parasite intestinal infection. I had, no real family or friends, nobody, I had nothing left. And I was like, okay, like I'm done. Like I tried everything. I should mention as well that I am a survivor of suicide. My older brother committed suicide when I was 18. So I had this life and I was like, this is not worth, this is pointless. Like there's no reason to keep going. And I was just sort of spending my last of my money, enjoying myself in Brazil. And one day, this person, it was 2 days before I was going to actually go do it, like actually end my life. And a person that I didn't know, a stranger, invited me to an ayahuasca ceremony. And I was like, well, I might as well. I mean, got nothing else to do. So I went and in the ceremony, I had a vision of the future of the earth, which was the most beautiful thing that I had ever seen before or since. And it completely changed my life. And after that, I pursued spirituality very seriously. And I came to learn a lot about suicide and a lot about our world that people really don't understand. And there's actually what I will say is that the individual fight against suicide, the individual's efforts to not do that, this is actually part of something that's a much bigger thing that involves all of humanity. It's not just you, the individual, suffering in your little corner. It's actually, this is many people going through this, and there's reasons for that, which have to do with the whole structure of our society.
Do you feel it's the collective conscious that is kind of emanating this destructive kind of energy?
That's one way to put it.
And do you think that the difference between, like you were ready to go and do this. There's, a lot of people, a lot of men, we're having a focus on men's health today. So I'll say men, a lot of men have this like complete pressure to be a certain way, perform a certain way, show up a certain way. And then they have the internal struggle. I can't let this person down. I can't let that person down. There's suicidal thoughts about what if I just jumped over that? Then there's suicidal actual like commitment to do so. What do you think is the difference that holds some people to like, I'm just contemplating it, I'm never going to do it, to actually being someone like yourself that was like, I'm ready?
The difference is in the desire to know what is true. Because if you really believe that your actions are meaningless, if you really believe that everything you do and are doesn't matter, I don't see why you would do anything with your life. Why would you even get out of bed in the morning? But this is the attitude that people have when they take that final action, and they actually believe it. And for people who understand a bit of spirituality and you understand a little bit about karma, a little bit about manifestation, people generally understand that your beliefs make your reality. So you go making a belief like that, like everything you do is pointless and meaningless, you don't go up to a good place. So this is the way things work in our regular lives as well as the cycles of afterlife. So if you're in your regular life and you have this belief that everything you do is pointless and meaningless and is never going to get you what you want, you're not going to get those things, right? You're making that reality, and that becomes what you experience. Okay. Yes. But if you die with this belief, it's worse than if you can just have it while you're alive and change it. That's what I'm saying. Now, I think in terms of what's going on right now with men, I think this is a really important thing to discuss.
Yeah.
Okay. At this point in time, essentially, men are considered to have basically like little to no value in our culture, which is a bizarre and insane thing to think. And there are feminists who will just say men are worthless, or men do not need them. They're pointless. This is racism. It's on par with racism. It's definitely sexism. So the fact that masculinity itself is not valued has resulted in a culture which is much more submissive than previous cultures have been, which is why we accept so many things that we shouldn't. And so masculinity is about knowing what is right. It is about knowing what is true and acting upon it. And, feminism women can do this as well. But the embodiment of a man is being able to do what is right and true, even if it is dangerous, even if it is risky. And this is what men need to know. They don't even know this. This is the fundamental part of being a man. You have to find the truth, embody it, and live it. And the reason men kill themselves a lot of the time is they don't even realize that this is possible. They don't even think this is part of being alive. They don't even see this as a part of the game. Like, you have to find the answers. You have to know what is true for you. You have to look for your own truths. And if you don't do that, well, then you're just going to absorb whatever everyone else thinks. And that's going to leads people down to suicide, because our culture is literally pushing the people to be more divided, more hateful, more resentful, more fearful all the time. This is intentional. Mm-hmm. And the end goal is, in fact, to drive people one of the goals is to drive people to suicide. That is one of the goals. Well, it's very much the pressure of the culture of our society, which has trained people to devalue men. And this has come into relationships in a really serious way, because the actual fundamental mechanisms of the natural mechanisms of masculine and feminine have been completely derailed, definitely in the US. This is not really the case in South America. The Latino culture preserved the traditional roles very well. But here in the US, due to all sorts of things, what feminism started as was a movement to make women, capable of having a job and an education and having rights, just like anyone else should have, right? And that's what they got. but it was essentially the purpose of feminism in the beginning was for women to be a little bit more than just a baby maker.
Yeah.
To have to be more than just their physical body, right? That they can actually achieve something that's with their mind and with their spirit. But the amazing thing is that in the modern times, in feminism, at least the last 10 years, has really encouraged women to just use their body to make money, or just use their body as to be the thing that they should be valued for, right? That their body should be what they are valued for. It's actually the opposite of how it started. Mm-hmm. And so it's pushed people into a kind of a pressure where they don't understand the way in which they're supposed to have a relationship, because the choices that they're making are based off of they're not based off of sound advice. The decisions that people are making relationships decision based off of are these bizarre belief systems which come from our culture, which doesn't even want us to really have any control over ourselves.
Only being there temporarily was like, are you serious? Like, this is on all the time. I mean, what's your thoughts on the agenda there and like how we can overcome it?
Well, it's fairly simple. Let's say that you're, we'll just pick a random, group. We'll just say that you're the head of the World Economic Forum. These people, okay, they don't want the populace to challenge them.
Of course.
So because they have all this money, it's very easy for them to just influence the culture by paying people. Yeah. They can pay politicians, they can pay influencers, they can pay media people. They own all the media already. That's why if you look on mass media, like CNN, MSNBC, all of them produce like the same lines. It's in this like the same. You can take the exact same line for COVID or whatever, and they do this, and all of them say it. Why would it be synchronized if they're not in the same? Like obviously, that's the same group. Yeah. So the effort is to make humanity weaker, so that we don't attempt to have a society that is actually free and abundant and built upon truth.
Well, and speaking of freedom of mind, freedom of thought, collaboration, I've heard you say that the mushrooms are communicators, and yeah. Feel that, like when you were at your darkest and just with in mind a man that's really contemplating suicide, like just it's so hard, I don't want to be here anymore. What did the medicine communicate to you to swap that frame of thinking, or to gradually, like, how did that look for you?
That is the battle against suicide is a spiritual battle, because it's a battle of what do you believe you are, and changing that belief can take work. It's what you believe about life. So the most important thing that I learned from taking psychedelics in relation to the topic of suicide is that life is literally just whatever you call it. No one can argue against you. So if you say that life is bad, if you decide through your whatever reason you have, doesn't even matter what your logic is or your justification, if you believe that life is bad, this can only lead to a painful life. There is no positive possible outcome for you because you believe life itself is bad. How that came to be, how you ended up believing that, that's kind of irrelevant, honestly. So what a person needs to do is find within themselves some kind of a gratitude that they have an experience at all, that gratitude for existence, right? It's the gratitude, it's a peace, it's a sense of oneness with everything, that we really are part of everything. There's no way to deny it. How could you possibly be separate from everything else if you came from it? How could you be separate from the universe if you came from the universe? It's just nonsensical to think that we're separate. So when you know that this is the case, that you are actually part of something that's much bigger than you, and that your life can matter if you try to work on yourself, yeah, and you do the things that you need to do to see life as good. All of what I'm saying to you, this took many years to accumulate all this knowledge through very, very intense trips I did. And it eventually broke down into a practice which I refer to as awumsitatsenrichi, which is a term that the Amanita actually spoke to me. And essentially what it means is it's just to be in a state of joy for being alive. It's just the joy of being. I say it's the rejoicing in the glory of existence. You're just glad that there is something instead of just nothing, because there could be, like, we don't know how all this happened, and isn't that cool? Like, it could just be no experience at all. At least there is an experience.
Yeah.
Something.
Like, I don't know if you're into channeling, or I mean, I think everybody channels at some points, whether they call it that or they call it focus or whatever they want to call it. But you're channeling the wisdom of an elegant, sophisticated teacher. That's what I really believe that the plant medicine and fungi is. And I mean, I don't think, to be honest, that we just are forgetting that we're God. You're God, just in the meat suit of Dragon,
right.
And I'm God in the meat suit of Shannon, and that couch right. is God in the fabric suit of whatever, and that table, that stain on the floor, like that, it's all God. And
yeah.
You know, we have this show called PowerPerspectives, and you know, like I draw a 6 on the floor in front of me. We're facing each other. That's a 6 to me. That's my truth. For you, that's a 9. I can't tell you. No, you better believe that's a 6 because that's the truth. You know, like everybody has their own truth about these things. And I really hold respect for people that, you know, have experienced the death of someone that they love. And it's that much harder when it's a suicide, because you feel like I could have done more to help. What could I have done? But in a higher perspective, I think you cannot ever die without it being your exact divine time to, in the exact divine way in which you contract or not. I think that was your path in that time, and you have either a shit ton to learn more, or you have to come back, or you have to like learn an evolution higher than if you did kind of exit without seeing it through to the end of class, I guess. But I do believe this is a school, like through your kind of trips and talking to these teachers, like, did you have an experience of feeling what it looks like for somebody that has passed through suicide?
Yeah. It's not pretty. But yeah, the thing about us acknowledging that we are part of God is really critical to somebody overcoming this particular problem for themselves.
Yeah.
That I mean, like you said it. I think you said it exactly the right way. You're saying like everything is God in its own way, and it's really true. Like, it's not possible for something to happen that is out of alignment with everything else in existence. How could that work? That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, if this all started from stardust that was floating around in empty space, and now it evolved to humans, this is how advanced it is now. Obviously, things are moving from a low order to high order. That's just obvious. So you have to understand that the mechanisms behind this order we don't see all of them. We don't know all of them. So you can't go around saying that you know it all, because you don't. I don't know it all either. Nobody really knows it all. And so to just be like, oh yeah, well, this happened, so therefore I should do this. You never actually know to a certainty that that's what you should do. You only know if you should do it if you actually do it. Mm-hmm. The taking of the action is how you know that it was the correct action. And so my understanding of life shifted a lot when I started to know these things, that the concepts we use, the beliefs we have, these things are really like flexible. They can be thrown around very flexibly. They don't matter that much, but your actions do matter a lot.
Well, and you said before, I think when we were speaking earlier, was like Amanita is probably the best solution for someone that is contemplating suicide. Can you explain a little bit about how that can help someone overcome the darkness that can seem like a black hole?
Yeah. So what Amanita does is it will give a sense of peace and well-being and centeredness to a person. So it will keep you relaxed and calm and feeling well, even if things aren't really going that well. Additionally, it has a mechanism of bringing the subconscious up to the surface. So it will allow you to heal from things that you don't even remember. And it does this through dreams. It's not really clear how this works, but people who have taken it for a long time consistently report that their traumas are lighter. For me, I mean, I had extremely bad trauma, and there was no way I would even be able to speak like this unless I had taken Amanita for so long. Right. Before I took Amanita, I couldn't even speak correctly. I had all kinds of issues. But yeah, it's partly the feeling of peace. It's partly the clearing of the subconscious baggage. And what I'm saying is that all it does is it takes your subconscious memories, which are traumatic, and it removes the heavy feeling around them. So they're not really traumatic anymore. They're just memories.
Like the wisdom of the experience.
Yeah. You can remember it, but you don't sit there like, oh my God, it was horrible. It's just, oh yeah, that happened. Yeah. And, right.
So without the emotional charge, I mean, I'm going to ask you too how you recommend people consume it, because if I'm our target audience, somebody that wants to overcome just this hopelessness, how do I start? And for me, microdosing Amanita, like I noticed things that would normally trigger me. I was like, I don't care, like cool. And I actually acknowledged it, feeling happier, like, oh, I didn't connect on that thing that would normally make me like give a shit, like care about it. I also noticed kind of injuries in my body that were just minimal little gnawings stopped, like little yoga injuries just stopped. And now I haven't been microdosing it for a little while and having psilocybin, but that's back. So I'm excited to start again on Amanita. But can you describe more of the benefits that you've seen? Because there's so many, and it's not just for overcoming certain things that trigger you. Like there's hundreds of benefits for Amanita, if I'm not wrong. Could you share some more of those that you've had?
Sure. Well, to answer the first question, you said, how should people take it?
Yes.
You should take it as a microdose in my tincture. So I hand make these tinctures. They are made from things that I forage. So I personally collect the ingredients, except for the vitamin C, which I can't make. But yeah, this is a tincture, which is just Amanita water, pine needle tea, pine sap, and vitamin C. And that combination keeps it well preserved and potent for a very long time. Better to be refrigerated, but it keeps it potent. And taking just a little bit of it, well, is the best thing for a microdose. You don't have to prepare it or anything. You just consume it. If you buy the regular mushrooms, you have to prepare them, and people can do this wrong. It's a little time consuming, and so people don't. It's easier to just get a tincture.
And you've said you've cured 20 years of chronic insomnia with using the Amanita, and I noticed so there's a bit more of the science to it, and for beginners, taking it kind of with your circadian rhythm. Is that something to do with the ibotenic acid being converted from muscimol, like just taking it at certain times of the day? You could be up all night if you take it later on in the evening. Is that true?
Well, there's two ways to consume it, basically. There's the ibotenic acid form, and then there's the muscimol form.
Okay.
So if it says the ibotenic acid, that's what it comes with raw. So when Amanita grows in the forest, it contains ibotenic acid and a bunch of other compounds. And if you consume it raw, you have to dehydrate it first, but after dehydrated, if you eat it raw, it will have ibotenic acid, which gives you kind of energy burst, and that will actually keep you awake. It gives you an energy, it gives you more concentration, more mental clarity. It's good for focusing or exercising. But if you want to get the relaxation effect and the healing effect, it's better to do the muscimol form, which has to be converted through heating. So it has to be prepared in a certain way to make it able to consume it.
And it's great that your tincture, I didn't know you could make tinctures really without the alcohol component. So it's great that your tincture doesn't have the concentration of alcohol to have it. And you just a couple drops sublingually or more than just one or two drops?
You just do like this. Comes with a little dropper. So 1 milliliter is 1 gram of Amanita.
Right.
And most people need 1 to 2, 1 to 3 per night. Yeah.
So let's say I have a friend that is suicidal, and I gift this to them. What other side effects, or are there any side effects? Like, what can they expect as an experience? And how can, I mean, if you're that kind of inclined to suicide, you're going to just take whatever, I think. But what can I prep them with? Like, what can I ensure that they know so that they feel confident about taking it?
I would say if someone is having those thoughts, they need to acknowledge that it is an emergency. To have the thought is an emergency, not when they're thinking about actually doing it. It's when they're seriously contemplating that is a good idea. When they think that ending their life is a good idea, that's when it's an emergency. That's when you need to get Amanita. So the best way to take it to present it to somebody is kind of to say that like if you're actually thinking that and you're taking that seriously, you should try something. And in terms of Amanita, I mean, they can hear this podcast, but I would say that if that's what they're thinking about, they should be open to trying something.
Right.
They don't have to try my thing, but they should try something. And that's not okay to just sit in life and be like, oh, well, I'm just suicidal and it's not a big deal. Yes, it is a big deal. If you're part of everything else, you matter. And if you think you don't matter, you're putting yourself in a position that is very, very dangerous.
Great. And can I, would that be the questions that I would have if I was on the receiving end would be, how long till it takes effect?
When you take the sleeping effect happens within like half an hour. So it'll give you really deep, restful sleep. And again, this is why I started taking it. And that happens within a half an hour or so. But the trauma healing, there's this kind of lightening of that takes some time. For me, it was over a couple of years to really get that kind of worked out.
And would you say, I mean, obviously it's your calling, but like once, say, someone is feeling healed from that emotional trauma and now they're no longer charged by the emotions of it, would you advise to kind of stop it? Is it just overkill, or would you just continuously take Amanita as if, it's a vitamin, it's a supplement, it's working through you, it's the teacher all the time?
It depends on the person, it depends on what they feel and what they feel is right for them. I think most people, for the vast majority of people, just microdose. That's plenty. You don't need any more. It's going to support you in the right ways. Amanita is is way more intelligent than human beings. Way more intelligent than human beings.
Of course.
So just know that it's working. You don't have to go take 20 grams and do all this crazy stuff. Okay, you can just do a little bit. But if people want to go deeper, the best way to go about it is to start by having a good diet, and that starts with taking care of oneself. So to try to break down kind of a sequence for you, when I started with Amanita, I was at a really low point in my life. Well, when I started with psychedelics in general, I was at a very low point. And it kind of went in a sequence of starting out with believing that everything was pointless. And then I started noticing that I had a whole set of behaviors that came from that belief. Mm-hmm. And the behaviors were all toxic. And so I had to slowly eliminate all these behaviors. And as I did so, I became happier and more competent as a person. And I started noticing oh, wow, this really works. You just have to keep trying. You have to keep trying to invest in what matters the most. And that's what pays you back. It's not investing in some concept of oh, I have to go to college. I have to get a career like this. I have to have these. No, it's not like that. You pick what you're going to do. You do what matters to you. And the more that you can do it, the better your life gets. It's literally works this way. And when people get into despair to the point that they become suicidal, it is because they have lost touch with this. They've lost touch with what matters. They think that nothing matters anymore. And that's such a dark place to be in. There is always something that matters. How could you even look around you? I mean, look at all the animals. Look at nature. You know how hard animals will fight to survive? They don't even know why they're trying to survive. They don't even know why they're doing it, but they still do it. Mm-hmm. And it's from the universal love for existence, which comes to us automatically. We automatically want to have well-being. We want to be well. So if a being doesn't want to be well, it is sick in the eyes of God. It's a being that is somehow not part of everything else. And so people have to realize that we really are part of something bigger and something greater. And this is what makes us more connected and makes our lives more meaningful.
What would you say? And thank you for that. Like, I'm just thinking about you 2 days before you had your plan to end it all, knowing what you know now, which is like, I understand you can't even explain with words what you see in psychedelic trips. You can't, there's no words. It's a lower vibration than what you're experiencing. But what would you go back in time and say to yourself? Like, this is on the other side. Like, what would you say to yourself? Without giving it all away.
I would go back farther than that, because really that day, that was the end of my fight against suicide, because I had made it to a place where it was possible for me to continue and move on and have something better. But I mean, in my early 20s, it was very, very dark. I thought about suicide multiple times a day. It was awful. And it was really getting through that, which made me, I guess, strong enough to eventually get many years later, like 10 years later, to the ayahuasca ceremony. And so, and I should say as well that by going through those experiences, I was being pushed into insanity, just as anyone who is in that state of suicidal despair is kind of in. It's a state of semi-insanity or total insanity. And by being able to go into this mental space and come out of it and still function like a normal human being, I eventually was able to use this as a skill later on to do lots of psychedelics, which is a sort of like a disordering of the mind, if you want to look at it in a certain way. It can be. Yeah. And so you're going into a type of insanity, if you want to see it that way. And being able to come out of it more strong, because I had already had all of these experiences where I had to do that before psychedelics. So when I first started taking them, I was already sort of prepped for it, if that makes sense. Yeah. And it just made it so obvious that that my life was made for this, and that this is something that matters to the world. Whatever your justification for your feelings is, does not matter. Your logic is irrelevant. It's a completely inferior and unimportant system compared with vibration. Vibrational resonance trumps every single thing you can think of in your logical brain. So if you try to convince yourself that it works differently, you're in trouble. This is the common problem amongst people today, is they only see things through this logical way. And this is mostly through like ritual indoctrination that we have called schooling. Mm-hmm. And they force children to stop believing in all the stuff that children believe and all those intuitions and abilities that they have when they're born. And they just crush those with, a desk that they're forced to sit in for 8 hours a day. And this has led people to basically see life in this way that's really, really not natural. People, every single indigenous person I've known, I've done plenty of ceremonies with indigenous people. All of them see the world through this vibrational way that I'm describing. All of them. They're not confused at all. The animals seem to understand it somewhat too. Like, it's just blatant. So if you are going to hang on to really negative emotions with what, it doesn't matter why you're doing it, that is the problem. It's just the bad emotion.
Do you think we just came here to experience sensations in the meat suit, but really we are like higher vibrations, just avataring this body space and kind of, I don't know, I feel like it's the soul using time as a microscope to have us experience 3D, if that makes sense. And
it's like a little more complicated than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, what's the point of all of this? It's too long of an answer really to give. I will say though that it does matter. This is an important period. So people need to acknowledge that there is something greater than themselves that exists. And if you want to live for that, you will have a meaningful life and you'll be happy. You may not be comfortable. You may not have everything you want, but you will have a meaningful life that is happy.
That's great. And I think if I was somebody that, is suicidal but wants to still doesn't want to have a bad trip and is thinking, oh, if you said, the lower vibrations, I'm vibing low. If I want to end it all, why maybe I won't have that. When you do microdoses with Amanita, it's subperceptual in that sense, right? It's psychoactive, but you're not necessarily, you're not experiencing negative effects at all. Is that correct?
So with Amanita, when you get over about 3 grams, you can start getting some negative effects.
Okay.
So yeah, if you're doing some dosages, you can get things like sweating. At certain dosages, you'll wake up in the middle of the night and won't be able to sleep again. And you can get tremors in some cases. So there's a few light side effects if you go a little bit too high in the dosing. None of them are very serious. They go away really easily from, just rest a few hours to be fine.
Right.
Or just reduce your dosage. But yeah, there's not anything really serious at less than 5 grams. If you're getting over 15 grams, that's a different story. But that's again for people who should be taking care of themselves anyways.
And if you're on kind of antidepressants or, SSRIs, should people be weaned off those prior to microdosing with Amanita?
They should. They should. Yeah, it's not a good idea to combine those two. Not at all.
Okay, because it's the same with psilocybin. So just to see if there's that alignment.
And I just want to say I don't understand the logic behind taking these things for you, the consumer.
Yeah.
I can understand the logic behind them trying to sell it to you. That makes sense because then you have to take their medicine forever. You can never get off of it.
Yeah.
But for you, the consumer, why would you think that that's a good solution long term to just pop a pill and then you don't feel anything, you get zombified all day? Why is that better for you?
It's a hand out of the hole, I think.
Why can't we just solve our own problems and just think for ourselves instead of just like, oh, pill, this will fix this. Oh, I don't like the pursuit of comfort has gone too far to say that.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of people like psilocybin is decriminalized now in Australia, and they are using it with accredited certified therapists. But like, can you take psilocybin with Amanita in microdoses?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
This is a really good combination. So
great.
They balance each other very well. So the Amanita brings a peace and centering, whereas the psilocybin brings an expansion. And the psilocybin is good. Like you need it for your conscious mind to expand, and people challenge their ego this way and all that. But it can make you a bit jittery and a bit like anxious and like too wired. It makes people kind of jumpy. They can have a panic attack sometimes on psilocybin. On Amanita, because it centers you, it makes the psilocybin experience very smooth. So you still have the psilocybin experience, but it's smooth and calm and it goes well.
So could somebody go to work with a drop of Amanita and microdosing psilocybin, and that's still fine? That's no.
I mean, yeah, I think most people could. Depends on the dosage and the person, but
right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Great. Do you wish that people knew something more about your work? Like if you could wish people knew something more about the medicine, what would that be? Or more about what you do with the medicine?
I don't know any other way to say this. I mean, Amanita has literally trained me and educated me in a skill set which completely derails our previous sense of how things operated and the way that things work on the earth. The system by which we have been trained to live is completely wrong, which I think most people know. But what Amanita has taught me is the system that is correct.
Yeah, that's great. Like, you're just reminding me of something like during Amanita, I had smoked a joint, and those two together, I didn't know it was going to really be so perceptual. And so I had a meditation and I was like having a full on, and I had just been microdosing, but just to have smoked a joint, I'm like, Jesus, the mushroom acknowledged me as if this huge looked down at my consciousness and said what's up, or acknowledged my existence in its respectful way. And it was without words was welcome to class. And show up when you want, or show up as you're called. But the downloads in that, just those two together, do you have kind of combinations that you've used with your vast experience that to really kind of have an entourage effect of like two things to biohack your health and wellness, your understanding, your expansion, your consciousness? What's your favorite combos?
Yeah. Well, the psilocybin with Amanita is a really good one, because if you can master that, you can go a lot higher in your psilocybin and learn a lot more.
Right.
Another good combination is cannabis and Amanita, which in the U.S. in some places they're both legal. Amanita's 100% legal, always has been, and in some places cannabis is now. And this combination gives you a very meditative yet functional state of mind. So you can do a really, really deep meditation this way by taking both of them and then just meditating for a few hours. And because of the combination, you want to stay there. Like you don't want to you don't have the urge to get up and leave or go do something else. You don't have the thoughts about it either. You're just in the state of being, and you can hold it for a lot longer. And I think that's necessary nowadays, because a lot of people, no matter how hard they try, they're not going to be able to meditate, and it's just too hard. So they need something to sort of show them what meditation really is, which Amanita can do for them.
Absolutely.
Amanita plus cannabis can really help with that. Yeah,
absolutely. I meditate daily mostly, and sometimes I can't wait to get into it. But like using with the mushrooms, it was like I can't. 2 hours passed, and it was just beautiful explanations, channelings, downloads, and like anybody can have that. It's not just if you do meditation daily. Like if you just sit with it and open up, just get heart-centered and grounded and open up to the messages, you'll receive them, and I think that's one of the most beautiful things about these teachers. And they are so much smarter than us. I think I follow Phil Swan maybe said, somebody asked her who would extraterrestrials first communicate with. Like they were, is it the president? Is it this leader, that leader? She's like, the mushrooms, like fungus is the most intelligent creatures that exist on this planet. Even like Tokyo, I don't know if you know this, but they put mushrooms underground because mycelium will always find the most efficient path. So they built their railway system on where the mushrooms traveled because that was the most efficient path. And I don't know, we are so lucky to have this knowledge and wisdom. Do you have a piece of literature or a quote or a book recommendation that for you has really kind of stayed with you and you kind of come back to every now and again because it's just been what you needed?
Well, the only one that comes to mind is the one that's written on this ring.
And what's
what that says? In
Hebrew?
Yeah.
I don't know.
In Hebrew, it's the name of God. And it translates as a phrase, which is, I am that I am. Which I always thought was the most accurate way to describe God. Is that God does not define itself. It just is. It's just, God just is. And this is really a good way to go about your life. You don't have to be something. You don't have to be whatever. You just be whatever. Just you are. You just exist. And it's when you start putting all these labels and definitions on things that you start running into problems. So I think it's a really easier way to go about life, to just be as you are.
I love that. I love that you have that with you all the time.
Yeah. And I really tried to align my whole life around this belief, around this concept. And it ended up becoming fascinating because all these things that I believed were true, that I was certain were true, it turns out that through the practice of believing this, it turns out that a lot of them were like semi-true or way less true than I thought, or sometimes not true at all. And it's really just the truth came from understanding that I can just be. I don't have to go fight everything. I don't have to go conquer the world. I can just be. And that's enough to have a good experience, which is all I want.
That's great. I think that's a great point to kind of end on. I want to thank you so much for your time. And people can find you. So your tinctures are available at amanitawarriors.com. .com. And also to connect with you on social media and check out some other really cool videos of you just here, I'm explaining this and I'm explaining this. And they're all just so in depth and thought provoking. That's also at Amanita Warriors on Instagram.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Cool. Is there anything else you want to share with the audience?
With the audience, I would just say the following: that if anyone out there, if you are at if you're in a place where you wake up in the morning hating life, where you have this already in you that you feel like life is not worth it, and you really, really want it to stop. What I will say is, it does not matter where you start from. You will be amazed when you actually set out to have a meaningful life for yourself and you intentionally pursue that. You will be amazed at how fast your life can change.